Hello there, everyone. I want to give you guys some book recommendations during this quarantine time, because maybe you have read your favorite book 8 million fucking times and are looking for something new. And maybe I have something for you. I want to talk about a couple authors. Number one is someone who just writes individual stories. The other ones I am going to talk about are actually people who write one big story, usually, like through multiple books. But we'll get to them. The first author I want to talk about is John Saul. And he's written a bunch of my favorite books. I actually own 4 of them. I actually recently just got my favorite book from Amazon, and I'll talk about that book first. It's called Shadows. I'm fairly certain it's the first book I read of his, and I read it in high school, and I think I was pretty young in high school when I read this, and it's a pretty fucked up story that I don't necessarily want to go into too much detail. Suffice to say, it's a sci-fi horror book. And a lot of his books have some kind of sci-fi. They're all horror books, but some of them have like sci-fi, spooky shit to them. Like some of them are more towards the spooky. Some of them contain some near future kind of stuff. And all of those books were written in like the fucking 90s, I think. Maybe some of them were written in the 2000s. But yeah, so Shadows. These are the 4 books I own. 3 of them are keeping up my microphone because my microphone stand broken. So I just have my Blue Snowball Ice microphone on literally 3 John Saul books. I have Shadows, which is the newest of his. It's the oldest. It's one of the oldest books from him, but it's a newer book, and all 4 of the books that I own from him are also paperback. And I'm pretty hard on paperbacks. They're fucking pretty well worn. And I don't even know how the fuck this stain got there. I'm assuming something spilled and just fucked that up. So I brought this is another book, In the Dark of the Night. I'll just let's see. I'll talk about some stuff from the prologue. It basically starts with this dude going to the middle of a lake and dumping spooked out stuff, basically. Or attempting to dump some spooky things, and you learn what those spooky things are throughout the book. I actually have to reread this. I have these books and I haven't read them in a while. The next book is The God Project, which I'm not sure if I actually have read from start to finish. I've had the book for a while. I'm not sure if I've actually read it from start to finish. And the other book is Black Creek Crossing. That's the final book that's holding up my microphone. And Black Creek Crossing involves kid gets... It's basically like kid is very into photography. Things ensue, kind of, from what I remember. The Shadows is the only one I genuinely remember all of the plot to, more or less. And it's probably because it's the first one I read, and the only one I've read from start to finish. I think it's had an impact on me. But he's written other books, Manhattan Hunt Club. Let's just look up so I can give you some more titles. Most of his books really deal with young kids to teenagers dealing with weird shit. Except for Manhattan Hunt Club, that deals with adults. But yeah, he's like, I'll just read. These are the book. He started writing books in 1977, and he's gone up to 2009. So I'll just read off all his books because there's a bunch of them, but not like that many. There's not like 8 pages. Suffer the children, punish the sinners, cry for the strangers, comes the blind fury, when the wind blows, the God Project, Nathaniel, Brainchild, Hellfire, the Unwanted, the Unloved, Creature, Second Child, Sleepwalk, Darkness, Shadows, Guardian, The Homing, Black Lightning, The Blackstone Chronicles, which is broken up into 6 separate books. The Presence, The Right Hand of Evil, Nightshade, Manhattan Hunt Club, Midnight Voices. Midnight Voices, I feel like I've read part of. Perfect Nightmare, In the Dark of the Night, which is from 2006. That's the actual. That's the newest book I have of his. The Devil's Labyrinth, Faces of Fear, and House of Reckoning. And I don't know if he's written anything since. Also, he's openly gay. So, yeah. Next author I want to talk about, I think I've talked about in previous videos, and that is Jim Butcher. Jim Butcher is the author behind the Dresden Files, and the Dresden Files is kind of a cool, rompy, modern magic thing. It melds a lot of... It incorporates a lot of different mythos. It's like there's like 8 different kinds of werewolves in Full Moon, and the first book is called Stormfront, which not a great title, at least for me, because the website, which is racist, and I actually started reading. I think I actually read one of his later books in the series before I read the first book. And I got the first book and the series, which was introduced me to one of my favorite actors, though. Got that from an ex, and I have actually lost Stormfront, the book, somewhere in this house. I don't know where the fuck it could possibly be, but I probably will just eventually buy another copy of it. I pretty much remember the story. It's mob dude gets murdered, basically like a mob hitman dude gets killed in a pretty gruesome way, like pretty gruesome. It's fucking, that's also another thing. There's a like, it's pretty gory. Like there's some detail in that fucking book. But it also involves Harry Dresden, the main character, fighting a summoned frog being while naked in a lightning storm. And no, I'm not making that up. Also takes place in Chicago. Jim Butcher is actually a pretty good author. I like his books. His books are actually good at, like, the Dresden Files is actually, like, the later ones with certain things, like some of those, it's pretty heart-wrenching. Like, some of the things in the later books is, like, and he's actually, I think, coming to the end of the series. Like, he's in his last couple books in the series. And, can't wait to see what he does after this, if he does anything. It'd be pretty cool. But yeah, like, going back, the stories involve a lot of different mythos. Like, there's, again, like, there's multiple different kind of werewolves. There's, is it La Groshi? I'll just look up the fucking book. But yeah, there's, it's Lugarus. There are 4 different type of lupine theriomorphs. classic werewolves, hexen wolves, which are like, have you ever seen the meme of like, you know, the different werewolves, like a werewolf, a werewolf, like, you know, that meme. Hexen wolves, if I remember correctly, are literally people who wear belts that turn them into werewolves. Lugarus, which are, it's an inherited thing, and lycanthropes, and yeah, so he meets them. He meets like a group called the Alphas. Not what you think. I think this is the first instance of the Alphas. I want to say maybe. It also you know, literally, like, I think there's an FBI agent who is one of them. Also, Lieutenant Murphy is a pretty good character throughout the series. She's a cop. She's a female cop. It doesn't get into propaganda territory, I would argue, because they're kind of, like, the rest of the force is kind of incompetent. And, like, even, like, Lieutenant Murphy's just, like, she's not, like, fucking, how to say this? She isn't, like, she doesn't play, she plays by the rules, but after a certain point in the book, she doesn't, kind of. It also introduces, Susan, who will become important later on in the books. But yeah. And then Grave Peril, like, and this is also the second book. Full Moon is the second book. It's really cool. I was gonna say character, but I'll say this. There's all these different mythoses clashing. They have skinwalkers. I forget what book it is when he actually encounters a skinwalker. There's actually an indigenous wizard who actually fights, and he, like, is the good version of the skinwalker, like, whereas the skinwalker is like this evil shapeshifter. I forgot his name. It's like John. I think it's like John something. He fights it, which is like a whole scene. Also, there are succubi, different kinds. Oh, sorry, they're not succubi. They're succubi, but they're also the different courts of vampires. I will say this: they're awesome versions of the vampires are pretty cool because in the series, because they're energy vampires, which are basically succubi. Cool weakness. They basically can't feed on people they like. Love is kind of a weakness. Like, they can't touch people they love because it burns them, which is a thing. It's pretty interesting. It comes into play later on in the series when other characters are introduced. There's the Black Court, which are literally like fucking... I want to say the Black Court is like the fucking like deformed bat fucking things. The Red Court, which are like standard kind of... There's a fun thing about what happens with the Red Court. Also, really fucked up things happen with the Red Court in the series. Then there's the Jade Court, which are like Chinese vampires, but I don't think they show up, like they're referenced. But I haven't read any of the more recent books, so I don't know if he shows up. Like, I think I've read up until Changes, That's another thing. It's just like it's a really good series. But yeah, there's some pretty good shit in there. Like the best part is that in this universe, magic exists, but Harry Dresden is seen as some kind of kooky, fucked up, like con man kind of person. Except for the people who know, like that magic is actually real. They also have this cool thing. I'm not sure if this is from any other, like if this is from a culture like that he's lifting from, but there's something called a soul gaze, which is when you and a person lock eyes for long enough, you see each other how you truly are. And Harry makes it a point because it fundamentally changes how you see people. Like you see them for how they are. And Harry makes it a point of not looking anybody in the eye too long because he's afraid of doing it. And he does it with Johnny Marcone in the first book. And Johnny Marcone's the head of the mob in Chicago. It's pretty good. Like, he's like, he doesn't know what he looks like to other fucking people. Like Marcone looks, I think he just like is green, like it's like green and all this like orderly like shit like that. But Harry doesn't know what people see when they look at him. Also, angels are a thing in this universe. Angels and something called the Denurians, which are very interesting. And if you want to look them up and spoil it yourself, you can. But there's a lot of cool fucking creatures that show up in this goddamn book series. And then, I'll mention, Little K. Hamilton. This is also a book that's... I have guilty... Like, I lose shit so easily. And my room is just a fucking mess anyway, so it's like... But, like, that's the second book, The Laughing Corpse. And it's good. Like, Laurel K. Hamilton is, like, the Anita Blake series. It's pretty good. It's kind of similar to Harry Dresden, but if I remember correctly, like, all these beings actually, like, all these mystical beings actually do exist. And she's a bounty hunter for them, which is interesting. And she meets, like, she's friends with this one vampire dude. It's pretty good. Pretty good. You should read it. That's about it. Also, you should read anything Saladin Ahmed. Fucking... Yeah, Saladin Ahmed. You should follow him on fucking Twitter, but you should also read his because he does comic stuff, but he's done others. He's most people might know him for his Miles Morales run, and apparently he's done Black Bolt, and but he also wrote a pretty cool fucking it's a high fantasy story, and I read some of it. I didn't finish it. But it's engaging, like it's genuinely very interesting. Because he basically takes a whole different take on the high fantasy, because high fantasy a lot of the times is very Eurocentric, like, and Throne of the Crescent Moon, which is possibly, like, it's the first book in a supposed series. It is very much, it takes the inspiration for, like, the mythology and stuff is very much, and it takes place in, like, a Middle Eastern type scenario, and there are, like, jinns and, like, necromancy's a thing. I forget what, like, they're called something, but ghouls, that's right. It's like they're like ghouls, and it's like all this other shit. It's fucking cool. Like, like they're dervishes, like, and they hunt shit, and it's pretty fucking cool. Like, and the main character is literally like this dude who, it's basically, you know, I'm too old for this shit. It's basically that, like, that's main character. That's who he is. He's like, I gotta do this shit. God damn it, like that kind of stuff. At least in the part of the book I read. Yeah, that's about it. I really need to rebuy fucking Stormfront and Guilty Pleasures. I need to reread all these books, like, because I like the book series. I fucking love Jim Butcher's stuff. Like, his stuff is so good. Also, there's a skull that is basically an intellectual, like a it's like an intellect thing. It's basically a skull he's basically a horny skull. I'm not even joking. Like, that's a running, like, he literally loves reading romance novels. Like, he loves reading that, and the times when he isn't in his skull, he's an intellect construct. Like, I think that's what he is. He's like he's a construct of intellect or whatever, and he's literally like this pervy fucking pervy. He's just literally a pervy skull, is what he is. It's pretty fucking great. Because they have, like, him and Bob, Harry and Bob have, like, these back and forth, and his name is Bob, which is great. And apparently he gets, Harry lets him out of the skull every so often to do shit, and he, like, creeped on some fucking, like, he creeped on some sorority girls or some shit. Like, he does some wild shit when he's freed from the fucking skull and shit like that. But aside, like, that's pretty shitty of, that character to do that. But most of the time he's confined to the fucking skull, and yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, have a good day, everybody. Read those books if you haven't already. And if you haven't, I highly recommend reading those books because they're fucking good. Peace out.